The word for freedom. When my children sprang this trip on me, it was an unwanted gift. They had to remind me, "Mum, it's something you've always wanted to do." As the only solo traveller, I sat wherever there was space, never with the same people twice, quiet and invisible as always. As we bumped along the rutted track, Nomo and Justin spoke to each other in a curious mix of English, Afrikaans, and a language I later discovered was Shangaan. I loved the animal stories Justin told us. A spotted hyena can tell another's age, sex and status by a single note of their call. I thought about whether people could match that. A sentence, a word, yes, but a single syllable? Justin kept reaching for the radio to share news of our sightings with other vehicles, sometimes receiving the signal for a new chase to begin. Now the sun was up, everyone was over the miserable 5 o'clock wake-up call. As the radio crackled into life on the dashboard, I recognised the word ingwe, the Zulu name for leopard. Replacing the handset, Justin grinned at Nomo in the jump seat up front, the two of them like schoolboys in their game lodge caps. It wasn't another leopard, he told us, it was better. He threw the jeep into reverse, planting the heel of his hand at the base of the steering wheel and spinning it round. "If anyone asked, we didn't go this fast," he said, the exhilaration in his voice infectious. The jeep had no sides, so falling out was a real possibility. With another jolt, it left the track and tore across the bush, driving straight over small trees which popped up like they were on springs. It made me look back every time, made me want to laugh, something else I'd forgotten. "Watch out on the left," shouted Justin, too late. The thorn bush tore at my face, but no one heard my cries. I pulled my floppy hat down and tried to breathe through the stinging. Behind my sunglasses, my eyes were watering. The Zulu word for cheetah is ingulule. We sat for a long time watching a female crunch through the skin, flesh and bone of a baby impala with the ease of eating rare steak. I looked away when she started on a gelatinous mass of entrails, rising from her haunches every few minutes to check for predators, looking straight at us with total indifference. Her head seemed too small for such a lithe, magnificent body, and when someone asked why the collar, Justin told us she'd escaped from a game farm hundreds of miles away in another part of the Kruger. Now she was free. Her face made me forget about mine. It's cheetahs, not leopards, who have spots. I had scratches, lots of them. I brought my hand towards my burning cheek and could sense the tender stripes without touching the skin. When we met up with another group for coffee, the tanned blonde woman who'd been sitting in front of me looked up as she tore open a sachet of Nescafe. "Oh my God," she said, "what's happened to you?" Justin was over in an instant, followed by Nomo, who covered his mouth. I wanted to tell him my face didn't matter that much to me. His young skin was flawlessly smooth, so dark it almost had a purple in it. "It's my fault," I said, interrupting their apologies. "You told us to duck." The woman helped me back onto the jeep, gave me coffee and got in beside me. Justin rifled through a first aid kit for a tube of antiseptic cream. "We'll head straight back to clean it up properly," he said. "Do you want me to do it?" asked the woman. "I used to be a nurse." She'd had something done to her face. I couldn't work it out, but her eyes, the part that can't be changed, reflected light from the diamond studs in her ears. Even at this hour she was wearing mascara. "My name's Hilary," she said, "but everyone calls me Hill." "As in over the hill," came a brash voice from the group of men eating muffins. I could guess who it was, the only one laughing. Hill's face didn't move except for one corner of her mouth very slightly. "Don't mind him, that's my husband Peter." In the early months without George, I put a note next to the kettle reminding me to make only one hot drink. I didn't want my family to worry, so it didn't say he's gone or widow. It said buy tea bags. They must have thought I drank a lot of tea. Back at the lodge, the manager called a doctor from the nearest town. "There's still a thorn in there," he said. "Best see to it quickly with this big storm coming." We'd seen dark clouds rolling across from the Blythe River Canyon as we drove back. I refused the anaesthetic. I'd had enough of numbness. I could feel the doctor digging around with fine tweezers, trying to extract the broken thorn. I could feel. There, he showed me the vicious spike before taping a small dressing over the wound. You'll be back to normal in no time. He couldn't have known that was the last thing I wanted. The days were odd, starting too early and lasting too long, with a constant sense of waiting for the next meal or game drive. Back in my chalet, sleep wouldn't come, and the balcony with its flimsy woven roof was no place to sit and read in a storm. The sky was darkening by the second. The temperature had dropped a good 10 degrees, and the sound of the bush faded almost into silence in deference to the wind. So I lay flat on the pristine covers of the enormous bed. In the absence of the usual heat, the polished steel fan hung motionless above me, the large disc in the centre acting as a mirror which the rotating blades had previously prevented me from noticing. I looked so small against that expanse of white. Although I couldn't see myself distinctly, or maybe because of that, something made me think of myself as a young woman. I was a teacher when I first met my husband. My name wasn't Mum or Grandma. It wasn't dear either. I always wished he wouldn't call me that. I had lost all notion of myself except in relation to people who didn't need me anymore. Instead of a class of children, I'd had a house full. 5, all but one married now with families of their own. Like shouting, you get used to the sound of thunder. It was different in South Africa, not cracking, but detonating and booming, a series of explosions. When it moved directly overhead, I looked up and saw myself in the metal reflection of the fan, tense with fear, yet awash with relief at being alone. I thought of the cheetah still wearing a collar even though she was free. As the storm began to retreat, I opened the door and listened to the rain changing in volume and intensity as though it had different settings. I was overcome with the beauty of it all. "Hello there," said a voice disconcertingly near. "It's only me, Hill. How are you doing?" My left cheek was still throbbing. With less chance of spotting game after a storm, there weren't many takers for the afternoon drive. "You'll still come, eh?" asked Hill, as if it mattered to her. It was the whole reason I was there, and I didn't want Justin and Nomo to feel bad about what had happened. Hill's husband Peter ignored me when she tried to introduce us, and sat pointedly alone in the middle row of seats. We sat behind. "He's more of a man's man," she said quietly. "He works in mining, you know. It's a hard life." The bit I knew about was being married to a man like that, and constantly having to smooth everything over, with the children, with relatives and neighbours. I dismissed Peter's rudeness with a smile and fell back on the conversation I kept hearing all around me. "Have you been on safari before?" "Yeah, many times," said Hill. "We're marking our 25th wedding anniversary." An odd way to put it. Not we're celebrating. But maybe they weren't. Maybe they were just marking time. George and I had a 25th anniversary, and we're only a couple of years off our 40th. To the very end he wanted the last word, when he clutched at his chest and his eyes rolled off to the side. On reflection, a single human syllable can convey quite a lot. It wouldn't help Hill if I told her George died a year ago to the day. We came across a pack of lions. 2 enormous males roared and paced astonishingly close to us. Justin whispered to stay completely still. Eventually they lost interest and returned to the pride, stretching and grooming themselves like pet cats. "I've dropped it," Peter said loudly. "Shh," hissed Justin. "If you drop a lens cap here, you won't see it again." "I mean the whole bloody camera," said Peter. "We need to get it back." It lay there in the dust, long lens pointing up in the air. "You can't," said Justin, "and that's the end of it." Peter's huge back inflated and his shoulders rose at least 6 inches. Beside me I heard Hill gulp. "Listen to him, Liefling." Peter shook himself free of her hand. "That's a 10,000 rand camera. He should fetch it," he said, jerking his head at Nomo. "He's practically one of them." We all gaped at him in horror. An earnest young man whose first language wasn't English dared to say, You are asking a man to risk his life. Except that he wasn't asking. From the jump seat, Nomo looked at Peter unmoved. As the tracker, he didn't often speak to guests. I will not do it. Then Peter stood up, which was not allowed. You people, you're all the fucking same. I'll get it myself. Sit down, please, sir, said Justin. The second you step off the vehicle, the lions will see you as prey. But Peter jumped, falling forward onto his hands. I had a vision of Justin starting the engine and leaving him to be devoured. Beside me, Hill covered her eyes. One of the male lions glanced over his shoulder just as Peter heaved himself back onto the jeep, brandishing the camera in triumph. I couldn't bear to think of Hill having to listen to this story for the rest of their lives. Right, that's it. I'm calling it a day, said Justin, shaking his head as we slowly reversed away. Peter turned to his wife, but she got in first. Don't you even look at me, Peter. I will never forgive you for this. There will be no sundowners today. Halfway back to the lodge, Hill and I exchanged a look. I was the first to reach for the ring on my finger. In a synchronized motion, we hurled them into the next thorn bush we passed. Freiheit, she said, with a smile.